Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks so I can analyze the Prince Andrew BBC interview. Another question here is, was Prince Andrew lying? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this content, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And also, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to that in the description for this video. So, we see that Prince Andrew discussed his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein in a 2019 interview with the BBC. Epstein, of course, was a convicted sex offender and a billionaire who died under mysterious circumstances while in custody for sex trafficking in August 2019. The official explanation is that he ended his own life. The interview essentially had two parts. Prince Andrew trying to explain that relationship with Epstein and denying an accusation made by one of Epstein's victims against him. Her name was Virginia Roberts. Now her last name is Giuffre. During the interview, Prince Andrew really had some unusual mannerisms and a number of disfluencies, but I don't know if those were out of the ordinary for him, like he could have used disfluencies on a regular basis. He seemed to have a significant number of memory problems, claiming he didn't have recollection of many key events, and he came up with some unusual reasons why he could not have been guilty of any wrongdoing. I will break down a few key parts of this interview. On the topic of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, there are a number of statements that don't seem to be congruent. He indicated that Epstein was a friend that he stayed with many times in many places all over the world, but he said he didn't know Epstein well. Prince Andrew didn't say that he regretted ever being Epstein's friend. He said Epstein surrounded himself with amazing people, and that gave Andrew incredible opportunities. So Andrew doesn't really seem to understand the impact of Epstein's many crimes, or he doesn't want to acknowledge that understanding. Andrew suggested that he could spot the kind of wrongdoing that Epstein engaged in, but he was not looking for the wrong thing, as he put it, noting that he trusted Epstein. In Andrew's many encounters with Epstein, he never noticed sex trafficking. He said there was no indication of that. Nothing struck him as suspicious. When questioned about the many underage females at Epstein's properties, Andrew first denied he ever saw them, but then later he noted that he may have viewed them as staff. He never really had any type of meaningful conversations with them. In May 2006, Epstein was charged with crimes of a sexual nature, yet in July of that same year, he was invited to Windsor Castle. Andrew said he didn't know anything about the charges, and that's why Epstein was invited. Andrew said that he ceased contact with Epstein from 2006 to 2010, which put Andrew in the position of trying to explain his visit to Epstein in New York in December of 2010 and spending 4 days with him. Andrew maintained that he decided to meet Epstein at that time with the sole purpose of telling Epstein that they could not be seen together. So he created an opportunity for them to be seen together to tell Epstein they couldn't do the exact thing that they in fact were doing. Seems like a strange plan. Andrew noted that telephones are for chickens, or he would have just called Epstein, undoubtedly generating a collective sigh by chickens around the world who do not want to be associated with Andrew. Andrew said that talking to Epstein in person was the honorable and right thing to do, and he had a tendency of being too honorable. The interviewer noted that Andrew was at a 4-day house party. Andrew responded by saying that was a stark way of putting it. The word he was looking for, of course, was accurate. That was an accurate way of putting it. And Andrew noted that Epstein's residence was a convenient place to stay. I imagine he's rethinking how convenient it was. The second part of the interview really had to do with the accusations of Virginia Roberts against Prince Andrew. She said they had sex on 3 different occasions in 2001. She was 17 at that time. Andrew said he had no recollection of ever meeting her. He also came up with a number of odd reasons why he must be innocent, why he could not have had sex with her. He talked about alleged errors in her story, like she said he bought her drinks at a bar, but he didn't know where that bar was. She claimed that he was sweating profusely during an encounter in London at Ghislaine Maxwell's residence, Epstein's girlfriend. He claimed that he had a medical condition that prevented him from sweating. which was caused by an overdose of adrenaline when he served in the Falklands War. He said that condition was present in 2001, but he has done a number of things in the recent past that allowed him to sweat. When someone can't sweat, this is referred to as anhidrosis. This condition is generally considered to be genetic. There is no evidence in the scientific literature of anhidrosis being caused by too much adrenaline, and there's no evidence of any treatment that can reverse this condition. In the span of a few moments, Andrew makes two assertions that are highly improbable. There's another problem for Andrew regarding this accusation that makes it stand out a bit different from defending other accusations. Virginia Roberts produced a photograph of her with Andrew standing next to her and touching her waist. Maxwell is also in that photo. Allegedly, it was taken by Epstein. Andrew said he couldn't explain that photograph, essentially saying that his people could not prove it was real or prove it was fake. He said he had no recollection of that photo ever having been taken. Andrew listed a number of reasons why it was impossible he was with Virginia Roberts in that photo. He had never seen Epstein with a camera. He only wore a suit and tie when he was in London, and that photo was taken in London. He never engaged in public displays of affection, and he never went upstairs in Maxwell's residence. So he had been in that residence before, but never gone upstairs. When asked why Roberts would make these accusations if they were not true, he said, "We wonder the same thing." I find this interesting because he's trying to bring people that work for him into the discussion. He was trying to avoid seeming isolated and just defending himself. It's not that Andrew was confused, it's that all these other people are confused too. This is a common tactic of people who are being deceptive. The interviewer asked him if he ever had sex in a house owned by Epstein. Andrew said that he racked his brain, but he could not remember ever doing that. I find this response to be particularly interesting. If he had sex in one of those houses, he would know that. If he didn't, he would know that as well. This idea that he had to really think hard and try to recall these events doesn't seem to ring true. Unless he had sex in so many different houses over such a long period of time, he just couldn't remember where that happened, right? So it just doesn't seem to line up with the lifestyle that he purports. It's almost like he's trying to keep his options open in case somebody produces irrefutable evidence at a later date. That way he can go back and say, well, I said I couldn't remember. I never said I didn't do it. If he's really a victim in all this, if he's really been wrongly accused of all these things, his denial should be aggressive. He should be on the offensive. Instead, he appeared to be defensive and careful not to commit to a statement that he couldn't explain later on. There is no way, of course, to know if Andrew was lying or not. Body language doesn't really tell us that much. Its value to detect deception is often overestimated. The best way to know is to find an instance where he says something that clearly cannot be true based on other evidence, or an instance where he says something that contradicted an earlier statement. His fanciful and unusual reasons why he couldn't be guilty may offer some insight, though. It's almost like he knows that he's lying, and he knows that people watching know that he's lying. So he's trying to find something that people can latch onto if they want to believe he's not guilty. Oh, he must be innocent because he can't sweat. Oh, he must be innocent because he never went to the second floor of Maxwell's residence. The problem is that he's making those assertions as well without any evidence. How do we know that he never went to the second floor? Is it simply because he says he didn't? He's just moving a layer deeper into the story. Those statements don't really change anything. It really does come down to whether somebody believes Andrew's statements or not. He really didn't introduce any evidence beyond his own assertions in this interview. On the topic of his friendship with Epstein, Andrew doesn't seem to appreciate how destructive Epstein was. We really don't see any empathy at all for the victims. He seems aloof, like he just wants to distance himself from the whole situation and not accept any responsibility. For him to assert that the connections he made because of Epstein meant the relationship was more valuable than it was harmful just shows a disconnect. I really don't understand why he would give this interview in the first place. He only made himself look guilty. The interview could be boiled down to Andrew saying he has no recollection and people should just look elsewhere if they want someone to blame. Amazingly, from what I understand, Andrew believed he did a good job when this interview was over. He was quite satisfied with his performance. Again, just showing a tremendous disconnect from how people feel about the situation. There is a reason that guilty suspects don't testify at their own trials. When a person is actually guilty, their story isn't going to line up with a logical narrative. So those are my thoughts on Prince Andrew's BBC interview. As always, I hope you found this analysis to be interesting. Thanks for watching.